My son was 4 years old when he told me someone had been sleeping in his bed with him. Not a stuffed animal, not the dog. Someone. I asked him who. He looked at me the way kids do when they think you already know the answer and are just testing them. "The tall one?" he said. "She doesn't talk. She just watches." I checked his room. Nothing. Closet empty, window locked, bed wrinkled on both sides. I told myself it was a dream. That's what parents do. We explain things away because the alternative is something we're not ready to look at directly. But here's the thing. The next morning, the pillow on the left side of his bed had an indentation in it. A deep one. Like someone had slept there for hours. He hadn't slept on that side. He never did. What I'm about to share is 3 accounts from parents who couldn't explain away what their children were telling them, who tried to, and who eventually stopped trying. I want to be upfront about something. When my daughter Mia first started talking about her friend, I thought it was the best thing that had happened to her in months. She was 6. We'd just moved to a new town after my job relocated us, and she hadn't made a single friend at her new school. She came home quiet every day. She ate dinner without saying much. I was worried about her. So when she started talking about a girl named Essie, I was relieved. She'd go up to her room after school and I'd hear her talking. Full conversations, laughing sometimes. I'd stand in the hallway and just listen, feeling this knot in my chest finally loosen a little. My husband thought it was normal. "Every kid does it," he said. "I had an imaginary friend until I was 8. But a few weeks in, something shifted. Mia started setting a place at the dinner table for Essie. A plate, a cup, a fork, every night. I didn't stop her because I didn't want to discourage her, and honestly, I didn't think much of it. Then one evening I noticed she'd pushed her chair over to make room. Not just set a place, actually scooted her own chair sideways so there was more space next to her. I asked her why. She said, "Essie doesn't like being crowded." I looked at the empty chair beside her. The cup we'd put there was tilted slightly. I hadn't touched it. I told myself she'd bumped it. The conversations in her room got longer. Sometimes I'd hear Mia go quiet in the middle of one, like she was listening to a response. Long pauses. Then she'd say something like, "Okay," or "I know," in this soft, agreeable voice. One night I knocked and opened her door. She was sitting on the floor across from the closet, cross-legged, looking at it. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Talking to Essie." The closet door was open, just the usual stuff inside. Jackets, a bin of shoes, a shelf of books. "Why is she in the closet?" Mia looked at me like the question was strange. "She lives there. She's always lived there." I laughed it off. I went downstairs, told my husband. We laughed about it together over wine. But that night, after Mia was asleep, I walked past her room and stopped. The closet door was closed. We keep it open. Mia has a thing about the dark inside closets, always has. So we always leave the door open so she can see in from her bed. It's been open every night for 2 years. It was shut. I stood there for a minute. Then I opened it quietly so I wouldn't wake her. Inside, on the floor, was one of Mia's drawings, a piece of paper she'd folded in half. I picked it up and unfolded it. 2 girls standing next to each other. One was clearly Mia. She always drew herself with the same red beret. The other was taller, much taller. Stick figure tall in that way where the proportions are just off enough to make you uncomfortable. Long arms, no face, just a blank oval. Written at the bottom in Mia's handwriting, "Essie and me." Underneath that, in different handwriting, smaller, neater, printed in a way a 6-year-old can't print, were 3 words. "She sees you." I don't know how she did that. She must have copied something, traced something, gotten help from somewhere. That's what I told myself. We stopped letting her set a place at the dinner table after that. But even now, a year later, sometimes I set the table and count the plates, and I've already set 5 without thinking. We're a family of 4. The previous story stayed with me because of that drawing, because of what was written below it. What makes the next account harder is that the parents didn't just have something to show. They had something to play back. My son Callum was 3 when the monitor started bothering me. We still used an audio monitor at night. Old habit. He'd been a bad sleeper as a baby and I'd never gotten around to turning it off. We kept it on the nightstand. He was a good sleeper by 3, so most nights nothing. White noise. Maybe him shifting around. But some nights I'd hear him talking. At first I assumed he was dreaming out loud. Kids do that. Short phrases, half words, mumbling. I'd lie there and listen for a few seconds and then go back to sleep. Then one night I heard him laughing. Not the half-asleep kind, the fully awake, responding to something kind. The kind where you can hear the other person even though you can't hear them. I got up and went to his room. He was lying in bed, eyes open, looking at the corner of the room near his dresser. "Callum, who are you talking to?" He said. "Nora." "Who's Nora?" "She comes at night." He said it so plainly, not scared, not excited. Just a fact. I looked at the corner. Nothing. I told him it was time to sleep, turned off his lamp and went back to bed. The next night, same thing. Laughing, then quiet. Then a voice, his voice, saying, "Okay, I won't tell." In the morning I asked him what Nora looked like. He thought about it. "Like a lady, but her face is wrong." "Wrong how?" He just shook his head. "Wrong. My husband is the one who had the idea to put the camera on the monitor. We had a video unit somewhere from when Callum was a baby. We set it up. For 2 nights, nothing unusual. Callum sleeping normally, rolling over. That was it. 3rd night, I was watching the feed on my phone from bed. Callum started talking around 2 a.m. On the screen, he was sitting up in bed facing the dresser, speaking in a low voice I couldn't quite make out. Then the feed glitched. Not a lost signal, not static. The image held, but everything in the far corner of the room went dark. Like the camera couldn't process what was there. A dense, rectangular shadow that wasn't cast by anything I could identify. It was there for 11 seconds. I counted because I replayed it 17 times. Then it was gone and Callum lay back down. The next morning I asked him if Nora had visited. He nodded. "What did she say?" He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "She said you watched." I felt something drop in my stomach. "She knows we put the camera up?" He nodded again, very seriously. "She said that's okay. She doesn't mind." We took the camera down that night. I don't know why exactly. It just felt like the right thing to do. The corner of his room near the dresser is always cold now. I've checked the vent situation, the insulation. No reason for it. Callum is 5 now. He hasn't mentioned Nora in about 4 months. But last week he told me she said goodbye. I asked him when she'd said that. He said, "Last night. She said she found someone else to visit." I hugged him and told him that was fine. That was good even. But I couldn't sleep. Because I kept thinking about the family next door, who just moved in 3 weeks ago, who have a little girl, who told me at the mailbox that their daughter has been having trouble sleeping. Most of these accounts involve young children. There's a reason for that, and I don't think it's because children imagine more. I think it's because they haven't yet learned to stay quiet about what they notice. The next story is about a family that learned that too late. This one was sent to me by a man named Paul. He said he'd never written it down before. He said writing it down made it too real, but he wanted someone to have it. His son Danny was 7. Paul and his wife had noticed Danny starting to sleepwalk. Nothing dramatic at first. They'd find him standing in the kitchen, eyes open, not responsive, and they'd guide him back to bed. Standard stuff. They'd mentioned it to his pediatrician. No red flags. Then one night, Paul woke up at 3:15 because he heard footsteps in the hallway. He got up, expected to find Danny doing his usual circuit toward the kitchen. Danny was standing outside their bedroom door. Just standing there. Still. Eyes open. Paul touched his shoulder and said his name quietly so he wouldn't startle him. Danny turned his head slowly and looked directly at Paul. Sleepwalkers don't do that. They look through you. Danny looked at him, focused. Danny, you okay, bud? Danny said in a voice that was almost too low. It wants me to open your door. Paul felt the air leave the room. What does? Danny tilted his head slightly. The one behind me. Paul looked down the hallway. Empty. Dark. The nightlight at the far end was on, just like always. He looked back at Danny. There's nothing behind you. I know, Danny said. That's why it's easier to see. Paul didn't know what that meant. He still doesn't. He walked Danny back to his room, checked the closet under the bed behind the curtain. He sat on the edge of Danny's mattress until the boy fell asleep. Then he sat there another hour, just listening. Nothing happened. The next few weeks, the sleepwalking stopped. Paul started to believe it was over. He and his wife had a few nights of normal sleep. Danny was back to being Danny, goofy, loud, obsessed with building blocks. But then Paul started noticing something. Danny would stop in the middle of rooms, just pause mid-play and look toward a wall. Not scared, just looking, like he was listening to something. One afternoon, Paul came home from work and found Danny sitting in the center of the living room floor, facing the corner near the TV. Hey, bud, what are you looking at? Danny said without turning around. It's learning the house. What is? Danny shrugged. The thing. It's been watching our house and now it's learning the inside. Paul sat down next to him. He kept his voice level. He asked, Does it know we can see it? Danny finally turned and looked at him. Dad, he said, it's not worried about that. Paul told his wife that night. She wanted to move. Paul thought that was an overreaction. They argued about it for weeks. What settled it for them wasn't an argument. It was a Tuesday morning. Danny was eating cereal at the kitchen table. Paul was making coffee. His wife was upstairs getting ready for work. Danny stopped eating, set down his spoon, looked toward the doorway to the hallway. Paul followed his eyes. Nothing there. What is it? Paul asked. Danny said, It wants me to tell you something. Paul's hands went still on the counter. Okay, he said. What? Danny turned back to his cereal, picked up his spoon, took a bite, chewed, swallowed. It says hi. Paul stood there. He didn't move for almost a full minute. Then he heard his wife's footsteps coming down the stairs. He heard her voice calling out about needing the car keys. He heard Danny's spoon clink against the bowl. Morning sounds. Normal sounds. He turned and looked at the doorway to the hallway. A door down the hall, the bathroom door, slowly swung inward. No draft. Windows closed. No one near it. Paul watched it settle open. He never told his wife about that part. He sent me this account 6 months later. He asked me only one thing at the end of his message. He asked if I'd heard anything like it before.